China has figured out how to have socialism and sneakers, right? Interesting conversation. When I was in Russia, I was talking with a young woman who had lived through the fall of the Soviet Union. She was telling me it was horrendous. The fall of the Soviet Union was an economic disaster for Russia, but that in the 1996 elections, she did not vote for the Communist Party. And why did she not vote for the Communist Party? She said, because even though everything was so awful at the time of the fall of the Soviet Union, even though people were dying en masse, she was excited about the fact that she was actually able to go buy some fancy new sneakers. In the time of the Soviet Union, you couldn't buy fancy consumer goods, fancy new sneakers. And so she couldn't bring herself to vote for the Communist Party because she was excited about having new sneakers. And that was basically how global capitalism framed the debate. You can have socialism or sneakers, right? Yes, you can have socialism, you can have guaranteed jobs, guaranteed health care, but you can't have consumer goods. You're going to have a level of poverty, you're going to have a level of stability, but you're going to have a level of poverty. But China has figured out how to have both socialism and sneakers, right? In China, you can have billionaires, but you can also have the state controlling the economy and taking care of people, right? Now, we don't have a situation where people have to pick between socialism and sneakers. China has got socialism and sneakers. They have got socialism that is based on Deng Xiaoping's very, very famous statement, poverty is not socialism, but to be rich is glorious, right? That you can have the state controlling the economy, but you can also have people working very, very hard, becoming wealthy, and living a decent life. There is not a trap. Socialism is no longer a trap. It's no longer poverty for the benefit of all society. It's no longer trading wealth for stability. Oh no, now China has figured out, with their 5-year plans and their state-controlled megacorporations and their 90 million members of the Chinese Communist Party, how they can control and regulate the economy with the means of production being operated according to a rational plan, but at the same time, people can still live out their dreams, invest, start new companies, start tech giants, become wealthy, but do it in a way that serves society overall. Socialism with Chinese characteristics, 21st century socialism, has kind of solved some of the problems that led to the fall of the Soviet Union. They have brilliantly figured out what is it that attracts people to Western capitalism, and then they have used that to strengthen the state-controlled economy of China. Right? They've basically stolen the thunder of Western capitalism. The Western capitalist argument was, sure, we have poor people, we have economic insecurity, but every so often you get somebody who has a new idea and they go out and they start a company and they live out their dream and they're full of hope and optimism. Well, now you can have that in socialism. You can have Jack Ma's in socialism. You can have tech millionaires in socialism. You can have socialism in which there is a planned economy, but there is also innovation and creativity. You can have state-controlled capitalism. You can have capitalism with people starting new businesses and all that, but overall, the state, the socialist government, has the power. You know, it's funny, you get a lot of people that will like Venezuela, but they'll say they don't like China. Well, in China today, the state apparatus in China is much bigger than the state apparatus in Venezuela. In Venezuela, the government controls the oil and it dispenses the oil money. It subsidizes a lot of private businesses. But in China, the state controls the steel industry, the biggest steel industry in the world. The state controls the banking sector, a huge banking sector. The state controls healthcare. The state controls a lot of things in China, a lot more things than it controls in Venezuela. If you equate socialism with state ownership, China is more socialist than Venezuela. However, that's not the definition of socialism. Socialism is not when the government does stuff. Socialism is when the state plans the economy. When the economy is not under the control of private capitalists who are just trying to make a huge amount of profits. When the economy is organized by society to serve the people, not to serve the profits of a small ruling elite. That is the definition of socialism. Capitalism is profits in command. It is the rule of the dollar. It is when big corporations and banks run the economy and the people are left behind and no one cares because the rich are just trying to get richer and they have no loyalty to society. But when the state controls the means of production, when society has taken control of the economy and the economy is forced to work for the benefit of all the people, that is what socialism is. And China, despite its flaws, and yes, there are huge flaws there are huge problems with corruption. I'm not an apologist. I'm not going to sit there and tell you their system is great, and no one there, even the most fervent supporter of the government, is going to tell you that it is. They know that they have big problems they have to tackle. But overall, Socialism with Chinese characteristics, that model where they use the strengths of capitalism to build socialism, has been highly, highly successful. And if we could take control of the economy in the United States, if we had a government of action that would control the economy and force it to work in the interests of ordinary people, we could make the United States better than it's ever been. If we had an operating modus with the rest of the world, a modus operandi of win-win cooperation, not twisting people's arms and demanding they buy our products, but instead, win-win cooperation, developing impoverished countries, helping them build infrastructure, helping them build up their economy while we build up our economy, controlling the economy. If we had that, we could have a very, very, very wealthy country in the United States, and we could be helping the rest of the world to get wealthy at the same time. There would be no contradiction, right?